Well, good afternoon, and it's fantastic to be here in Budapest with so many conservatives, so many patriots, and so many freedom fighters. It used to be the case that people would flee Eastern Europe to go to countries like Britain, where there was freedom, where there was free speech, where there was free enterprise. Now people are leaving Britain to come to Budapest to talk about free speech. And the reason for this is that, unbelievably, people are being locked up in Britain for speaking out in public. Lucy Connolly was sentenced to 31 months in jail for posting on X, even though she deleted the post 4 hours later. And last week, she tried to appeal to be let out of jail early for good behaviour. Now, Britain's jails are full, and rapists, paedophiles are being let out of jail early, but not Lucy Connolly, because the system want to make an example of her. And this isn't just an isolated incident. Thousands of people in Britain are being apprehended and arrested every year for praying outside abortion clinics, for burning the Quran, even for displaying a poster of a terrorist who was being blown up by a pager. That was considered to be a problem. And what is the government's reaction to this? Well, the government's reaction isn't to say, we've got this wrong. How on earth could we do this in Britain, the country that invented free speech? In 1695, we created the free press for the first time. No, the reaction of the authorities is to say, we need a definition of Islamophobia in the law so we can reintroduce the blasphemy laws. And that is what is happening in our country. And people say to me, how on earth can this happen in the nation that invented the Magna Carta and the Bill of Rights? Well, the answer is that we have a deep state in Britain that is out of control. Now, I'm sure you've all seen Yes Minister and Sir Humphrey. What Tony Blair did is he put that on steroids. He changed Sir Humphrey into a kind of Greta Thunberg-type figure, and he made it harder for civil servants to be replaced. He removed accountability from the judiciary. He created a Supreme Court in Britain that we had never had in our history, and he took power away from Parliament. And what has happened is those institutions in Britain have been corrupted. They've been captured by left-wing ideology. Islamicism, eco-extremism, transgender ideology. And what do all these things have in common? Because they don't automatically seem the same. Why is somebody who believes in transgender ideology allying with somebody who believes in Islamic extremism? Well, the thing they all have in common is they all hate Western civilization. They hate the family, they hate the nation, they hate free speech, and they want to undermine it. And that is who we have allowed to embed themselves in our institutions. And we can see the same thing happening across Europe. We can see the left not trying to fight battles through the ballot box, but instead trying to restrict free speech, instead trying to restrict who can even run in elections. So Marine Le Pen has been banned from running in France. The AfD have been described as an extremist group. We can see interference in elections in Romania and across the European continent. And underneath all this is a very, very powerful network, a globalist network that is well-funded, well-organised, and is pursuing an agenda of their own ideology. The World Economic Forum, the IMF, the World Health Organization. And what we have is we have people that float between these organisations. I think Mark Carney is the primary example of this. somebody who failed at the Bank of England, who printed money and created inflation, who then was associated with the World Economic Forum promoting net zero, and now he is Prime Minister of Canada. This is what the left are able to do, running that network. And I wasn't aware of how powerful these people were until I became Prime Minister in Britain. I understood that we had to fight the system, but I thought we could achieve it by reform, by change within the system itself. And that's why I ran to be Conservative Party leader, to take on the economic orthodoxy, to cut taxes, to get fracking, drill baby drill, and to restrain the size of the state. But what happened is when our plans were put forward, I faced smears, I faced lies, I faced massive hysteria about what we were trying to do, even though before and since, far higher deficits have been generated, far higher debts have been generated, and indeed, the gilt price has been higher. But what the authorities didn't like is the way I challenged the groupthink and I challenged the orthodoxy. In fact, the Bank of England have admitted that that period in 2022, the vast majority of the market movements were down to their failures to regulate the pensions industry. But none of those corrections have been printed in the mainstream media. They would rather perpetuate the lie that it was my fault and my responsibility. And this really opened my eyes to how powerful unelected authorities are, how powerful the globalist network is, and how powerful the left have become and how well funded. The only hope is to take them on directly. And that's why I completely support what President Trump is doing in America, taking on Harvard, taking on the State Department, dismantling the bureaucracy, doging the officials. And some people say he's gone too far, he needs to use a scalpel, he can't be pushing it so hard. But I know from experience that unless these people are taken on head first, they won't be defeated. And that is what our movement across Europe now needs to do. We need to create a Trump-style revolution across the European continent. I know from my own experience, it's not enough just to win an election. It's not enough just to be in office. Because at the moment, the left control the playing field. They control the rules of operation, and they have rigged the rules against us. So how are we going to do that? How are we going to change the playing field? Well, first of all, we need independent media. We need the Joe Rogans and the Ben Shapiros of Europe and the UK. And we need to make sure that they have a huge audience. The second thing we need to do is we need to repeal the left-wing laws, and we need to leave the failed international institutions. The ECHR, the WHO, we should not be part of them. We also need to dismantle the bureaucracies that we have at home, because you won't be able to win with a group of people who are not on your side, a group of people who are smearing, leaking and briefing against you. And we also need an alternative institution to Davos, one which has financial might to be able to take on the networks and the power that the left have. Ladies and gentlemen, we need a great restoration in Europe. We need to restore Christian values to our continent. We need to restore parliamentary democracy and freedom. We need to restore the nation state. That's why we're here today. That's why we're here at CPAC. And we need to keep going to make Europe great again. Thank you.